We are eagerly awaiting our first of 6 amazing guests tonight: Mindy McGinnis, Lois Ruby, Jennifer Nielsen, Gordon Korman, Melissa Savage, and Wendelin Van Draanen.
Our friend Lois Ruby just showed up, Kenneth.
That's right, Lois Ruby, who is our 420 author. We can start talking to her.
Okay.
Hello, Lois.
Hey, Lois. Yay.
Hi, Lois.
Welcome to Oklahoma.
Lois is no stranger to Oklahoma. She's been here several times, visited a bunch of schools, and has won the Sequoia for the Doll Graveyard.
Hi.
Love our Lois.
Well, Lois, Mindy McGinnis is our first guest, and she's running a little bit late, so we'd love to chat with you while we wait for her.
Okay. So you want me to fill in until she shows up?
That'd be wonderful.
Okay. Well, first of all, who do we have here? I see Tina and Teresa. I know you.
What new books do you have coming out, Lois?
So you asked about my new book. This is the book. It's called Red Menace, and it is actually set in Kansas. And the boy in the story, whose name is Marty, is a major baseball fan. But it's 1953, and Kansas does not have anything like a major team. So he becomes very much involved with Mickey Mantle and the Yankees and so forth. But there's something else going on in 1953. If those of you are old enough to remember, and maybe you're not, I do remember, that was the time of the McCarthy hearings. That was the time when we were in this strange position where people were being accused of being communists, who were doing things that we would now consider basic democratic things, like believing in equality for people, believing that the races should not be distinct from one another, that we should embrace everybody. And in 1953, those were considered communist ideas. And at that time, a lot of people were brought up before these committees, the House Un-American Activities Committee, several other similar committees, and they were questioned about what their communist leanings were. Most of them were not communists. They were what we would just consider liberal thinking people. But it got to be quite a problem because a lot of people went to jail. There were blacklists of authors and directors and actors and so forth, so that they couldn't get work. They lost everything. And so in my story, Marty's parents are professors, college professors, and they refused to sign a loyalty oath, not because they're communists, but because they object to the fact that Americans should not have to sign a loyalty oath. We are loyal by virtue of being here. But because his mother refused to sign the loyalty oath, she was brought before one of these tribunals and could very easily have been sent back to Poland. Now, she was an American citizen, but her parents were from Poland, and she happened to have been born in Poland, but she was still an American citizen because her parents were American citizens at that point. And so imagine what that's like for a boy who's 13 years old, who's got the FBI following him night and day, following his family, even to the dentist, wherever they went. They climbed up the trellis outside his house. They inspected his garbage. They checked his mail before it came into the house. So his family's basic civil rights were violated. And then he was afraid that his mother might be extradited to Poland. In the meantime, in order to keep his sanity, he is writing memos to Mickey Mantle. And Mickey Mantle does not receive these because Marty doesn't have the nerve to send them. But it really helps Marty to put his feelings down in about what's going on and how afraid he is at this stage of his life. And although it sounds like a pretty serious story, there's a lot of funny parts in it, and it's a very gentle story in many ways also. So that's basically what the new book is about. And if we have a little more time, do we have a little more time before? Okay, if we have a little more time, and we'll tell you that the next book that's coming out in probably November of 21 is actually set in Oklahoma City. And it is also about a 13-year-old boy, and it has to do with his doing a community service project in an old folks home. And in that population, in the old folks home, are some mobsters who have been inactive for the last 50, 60 years and are hiding out in plain sight in Oklahoma City. And again, it's a story that it's a family story, and it has a lot of very gentle moments in it. Nothing supernatural. Those of you who are familiar with my spooky books, that's a whole different side of me. These are much more meaty kinds of stories. So that's essentially what my books are about. So let me hear from other people.
Do you have a title for that one, the Oklahoma City one?
Yes, it's called Eddie Whatever. Because the first person he meets as he walks into this assisted living place, she asks what his name is. She doesn't wait to hear the answer. She just, snaps at him and says, well, Eddie Whatever. And so that's how he goes through the rest of the story as Eddie Whatever.
Those of you that are just joining us, we are joined by Lois Ruby. She is our second author to speak with today. If Mindy McGinnis arrives, we will jump over to her for a few minutes. But we just are very glad to see all the new faces. You've done a great job of filling up the room tonight. We're very thankful that you're here. So Lois Ruby is our author, Sequoia Award winner and best-selling author. And if you have any comments or questions, for her, that'd be great. Maybe comments about how much your students loved Doll Graveyard or some of her other books.
I'm scrolling around to see who else is here. Let's see. Oh, lots of the librarians whose schools I've visited. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lois. This is Julia Colmia from Northern Hills Elementary, and you've been to our school before, and we cannot seem to keep your books on the shelf. They are loving not only Doll Graveyard, but all of them that came, and they can't stop talking about your husband. We miss your husband too. He came with you
Yes.
when you came to visit us. Well,
And he said to say hello to everybody too. He asked if he could stop by.
yeah.
No, this is my time, not your time. But
Well,
anyway.
they remember him fondly because he sat in my red rocking chair holding my big old teddy bear the whole time you talked, and they just thought that was the best thing.
Oh, I remember. It's been a couple years. Well, maybe I can come back to Oklahoma
It
when
has.
the new book comes out next year.
Absolutely. We'd love that.
Oh, hi, Stacy.
Hi, Lois.
Hi.
All right. So we're
Look at all those
Mindy McGinnis has arrived, but we're going to go ahead and spend a few more. Do you want to wait for your turn? Let's just do that, Lois. Let's wait for a little bit longer. We'll switch over to Mindy, and then we'll come back to you. Welcome, Mindy McGinnis, Sequoia winning author for The Female of the Species and previous nominee for Not a Drop to Drink. Thank you for joining us. From Ohio, right?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. I just adopted 2 puppies last week, and I was outside with the puppies.
We don't get to see them. Do we get to see them or not?
I can grab one if you'd like. They're wandering around. They're probably peeing somewhere.
We'd love it. Well, we're joined today by a whole bunch of great Oklahoma educators and librarians, which are also educators too. And we also have this streaming live for some of their students to watch on YouTube.
Great.
So thank you for being here and blessing all of us with your presence.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. I'm sorry you get on puppy time, and puppy time definitely overrides human time and the Roman calendar.
It sure does. Well, we're hoping to hear some about Be Not Far From Me and other things that you might be working on, and then people might be sharing what their students have thought about your books over the years.
Great. Okay, so Be Not Far From Me is my most recent release. It came out in March, and it's about a girl that gets lost in the Smoky Mountains and is out there for more or less a month and has to survive on her own wits and some survival tactics that she has just by dint of who she is and the person that she grew up to be. I call it Drunk Hatchet with a Girl because she was very much, she's very much what you would call white trash, quite frankly. And so she is out in the woods drinking, comes across her boyfriend who is with another girl. She gets very upset. She's drunk and she ends up just off the path and gets hurt, is injured. A boulder rolls over her foot when she rolls down into a ravine and wakes up off trail. And if you've ever been on some trails in the Smokies, they're so small that once you're off, you're not going to find them again unless there's people moving on them. And in this case, there are not. So she ends up in this situation, and it's all about, of course, her survival, but also she hasn't always been the nicest person. And so there's a lot of internal exploration as well. And one of the biggest things, and I tell a lot of people that Ashley, the main character, a lot of the stories from her childhood, because there's a lot of reflection in the book, are actually things that happened to me and things that I experienced. Because I grew up very rural, pretty economically disadvantaged. And so some of the things, come here, let's do it. Let's show the puppies. Come here. Okay. This is Gus. This is Gus. And this is Clara. Mwah. Clara is deaf. So we got two puppies so that he can kind of be her support animal that seems to take the risks and do the most and have the most activity. So I think she's his support animal, to be honest with you. So yeah, this is Gus and Clara, and they are Dalmatians, and they have to go outside and go to the bathroom. At least we hope, right?
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, puppy break. Those are my puppies. And by the feel of it, I think they already did go to the bathroom. So, but yeah, that is that's the gist of Be Not Far From Me, my newest book. I have a new book coming out next March of 2021 that I am really excited about. It is called The Initial Insult, and it is very much it's not a retelling, but I borrow very heavily from a whole bunch of Edgar Allan Poe short stories. Typically for this one, it's The Black Cat, Cask of Amontillado, Fall of the House of Usher, and Mask of the Red Death. And I pull elements from all of those stories and I set them in rural Ohio town, very Southern Ohio, Appalachia. So I actually refer to this in my head as Appalachian Allan Poe. So I am really excited about this book. It's a series of 2. The Initial Insult comes out in March of 2021, and then The Last Laugh will come out in March, I believe, of 2022. So that's what I've got out now. It's what I've been up to. It's what I've been working on, and then mostly just cleaning up a lot of PP at this point in my life.
Now you said you're ninth generation farmer, plus you're a former school librarian. You know, our library friends are going through a kind of a tough time right now with the COVID thing, trying to stay in touch with their students while everybody's doing distance learning. You know, do you have any great memories of being a librarian, or? And also, I'd like to know what you're farming. What do you farm?
Okay, yeah. So we're grain farmers. That is something that you know, I just grew up with. It's 9 generations, probably rolling into 10. And so basically corn, beans, and wheat is what we grow. And, you know, that's just what I grew up with. It was funny. I actually, I offer editing services, and I was reading a manuscript for someone yesterday and it was set in this small town out west. And she was talking small town, and this fiction in this novel attracts tourists and people come out all the time, and the wheat people come out to take pictures of the wheat fields. And I emailed her back and I'm like, listen, I grew up in Ohio, I just don't buy this. It was like, why would you stop and travel somewhere to take pictures of wheat. And she's like, no, it's a real thing. And like, she sent me this link to her actual hometown where people travel from like China and Germany to come take pictures of their wheat fields. And I'm like, dude, I'm from Ohio. I don't get it, but whatever. So that's how I grew up. I grew up farming. I grew up very much like in the woods as well, which is reflected a lot in Be Not Far From Me. And then as far as being a librarian, I miss it so much. I loved my job. I had 2 books come out in the space of 1 year. I think it was in 2017. It might have been 16. But I had 2 books come out in the same year, and I wasn't able to continue to work full time and be a writer. So, but I still substitute in the school that I worked at, and you can never ever get substitutes. So I'm in the building every week. Of course, not anymore. I do miss the kids so much. It's not fun right now. I ended up putting up a free little free library in my hometown because it's very rural. And of course, our local branch had closed as well. The public library had closed. The school library is closed. So I put up a free little library for people to use in the community. And it's had a great response. Like they're actually, so I put it up and, dug the post hole and everything. And I put down stepping stones to it. And I was like, man, we're going to have to mow that. I'm going to have to make sure it gets mowed in the summer because the business that I asked to use their property, they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead. But I was like, I'm going to have to, be a good citizen and make sure I take care of the grass growing up around the stepping stones. There's so much traffic. There's just like a beaten path. The grass is not growing back. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome.
That's great. And do you substitute at the high school level so you can get, character voice ideas?
Typically that's what I prefer. I will substitute anywhere from 5th grade up to seniors. I have to monitor myself much more closely when I'm with 5th graders just because of, my particular sense of humor and of course my language choice. But I typically do better with high schoolers, love high schoolers. They get me, I get them. I did substitute in a 5th grade classroom like 2 days in a row. And the one, I had a student come in the next day and she saw me at the door, and a lot of them are always happy to see me, but she saw me and she just went, oh. And I'm like, wow. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Do you not, like it when I substitute? And she's like, I'm sorry, Ms. McGinnis, I like you a lot, but it's just that you're really loud. And I was like, okay, that's certainly true. I am loud.
We have a few more minutes with Mindy McGinnis. If anyone has a comment or question, don't be shy.
I just wanted to ask if your kids that have you in their class for substitute, are they excited to have a writer in their classroom?
Not really, to be honest, which is nice because, like I said, I'm from a really, really, really small town, like population 1,500. And everybody already knows everybody anyway. And so like my sister is the head of the English department. So my sister is their English teacher. They don't, it's just, most of them had me as their librarian because I would cover everything from 6th graders to seniors. So I'm just the librarian who also wrote a book. It's not that fascinating for them. They don't think I'm that great. And then that's fine. I actually prefer it that way. But it is funny because whenever I'm getting ready to go somewhere, I'm going to go on tour, I'm going to, go meet people. My kids are always like, oh, tell us who you met. Did you meet anyone famous? And they get like really excited. And I'm just like, well, I mean, I'm kind of a big deal outside of my hometown. So
that's cool.
All right. We have like 1 or 2 more minutes. If no one has a question, I'm going to jump in with one. Who has a question or a comment? Okay, well, you've got a great YouTube channel. I've watched several of your videos, and I think that some of them, especially the Between Shades of Grey one, is my personal favorite. And so is there anything you'd like to promote? Anything that you're doing, anything on social media, anything that you'd like for people to look at when they're on their screens?
Well, honestly, I have, I kind of backed off of my social media lately just because I'm very tired of everyone sharing their quarantine accomplishments. I mean, window art is great and new cooking is really cool, but I'm not doing those things and it makes me feel bad. So I have really like kind of pulled back from social media, plus puppies, so I don't have time. But something that I do work on and has started to take up more of my life is a podcast that I have called Writer Pants on Fire. And it is for writers. It's for at any level. And that has become a little more time consuming for me as it has become more popular. And you're talking about the videos on my YouTube channel. I used to put up videos fairly often, like inspiration would strike and I'd be like, I'm going to do this. It'll be great. And now between writing and the editing that I do on the side and the podcast, and of course I don't have office hours, I work from home. I'm working from like 10 a.m. usually until 8 or 9 p.m. at this rate. And just trying to keep everything, my to-do list checked off. So I don't have a chance to make videos as much as I used to. Although now that I have puppies, I should probably consider it.
Yes, they're very popular. Well, we hate that our time is up with you, and we really thank you for taking this time away from your puppies. And we all wish you the best. And if people want to get in touch with you or ask you any follow-up questions, is it okay? I mean, like, is your email kind of private, or do you like to hear from?
No, feel free to email me. It's just Mindy@MindyMcGinnis.com. I'm happy to answer anything. You can tweet at me. You can post on my Facebook page. Really, it doesn't. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, and I always answer everyone. So yes, please, if you have any questions, of course I got here late, so please feel free to contact me.
All right. Thank you so much, Mindy. And we wish you the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Mindy McGinnis.
Very
Sequoia winner, best-selling author. And now we will transfer back to Lois Ruby, who was so kind to help us fill the gap, and then she stepped in and then she stepped back. So we've got about 10 more minutes with Lois Ruby. Thank you, Lois, for being patient.
You're welcome. Well, I heard you ask Mindy if she'd had an experience as a librarian that she'd care to share with you. My experience is in public libraries. So when I was a newly minted, brand new bride and new librarian in the Dallas Public Library, I had a library director who was a really mean old woman, just, like we used to think librarians were. And we had about 34 copies of one book that was called Mrs. Mike. And I don't know if any of you remember it. It was a really sappy love story. And I was working in the teen department. And she said to me, if you were any kind of a librarian, you would be able to get these books in circulation. And that was a great challenge. So one Saturday, I made it my mission to make sure nobody walked out of that library without a copy of that ridiculous book. And by the end of the day, I proved that I could get that book in circulation. That doesn't mean anybody read it, but at least we got the circulation records for it. So I spent 2 years as a public librarian, and then another year with the University of Missouri as the art music librarian. But I'd much rather be writing books. Let me think what else I can tell you. Oh, about social media. I don't have anything you can plug, but some interesting things have come along because of this emphasis on Zooming right now. So people that I did not know were reading my books have contacted me. And one school in Connecticut told me that the teacher was working with her class on Red Menace, and it was a 7th grade class, and invited me to Zoom with them and talk about that book, which is a really interesting thing to do. And then all of a sudden, some other teacher in Delaware said they'd been reading my old book, Steal Away Home, which has been around for more than 20 years and is still being read quite a lot. And so this week I Zoomed with her 4th graders, and on Monday, that same book is being read. I'm Zooming with a group of 7th graders and they're reading it. So that's been a different experience for me. I'd much rather meet people in person, but we don't have that option now. The only person I meet in person is my husband. Otherwise, what can we say? We just recently moved from Albuquerque to Cincinnati, and then we went in lockdown right away. So we haven't even had a chance to get to meet our neighbors. Oh, hi, Dina. I just saw your little chat thing. But not knowing what's going to happen in the new school year, I don't know. I have some school visits set up already, and I don't know whether they will happen. We don't even know if school will open in the fall. So the one advantage to being in this lockdown is that I have a lot more time to write, and that's been a real privilege. So in the morning, I get up about 5:30, 6 o'clock. I go down to the basement, which is an unfinished basement. There's nothing in it except a desk and some chairs. It's cold, it's sort of dank and dark, and it's the perfect atmosphere to write in because there are no other distractions. Oh, hi from Sam and Teresa. Oh, how nice. And how are all your sunshines, Teresa? I don't know if you can hear me. Anyway, that's pretty much, what's been going on around here. We made the move so we could live closer to one of our children. And of course, we could just wave to them from a distance now, but at least they can't pack us up and send us back yet.
Lois, this is Janet from Sequoia Chat. I was wondering, I think I heard that your son has written a book, and I wondered how it made you feel that one of your children is starting to write. How does it make you feel as a author?
Yes, it's a wonderful feeling. It's a great book too. It's called Penelope March is Melting. And his second book is already written, but it has not yet been chosen for publication, but it will be. And it's a great privilege to have a son who is also a writer, who is a really, really good writer. And then he has a 15-year-old daughter who is an excellent writer as well. So I don't know whether it's, in the genes or whether one just feels like they're building on the joy of the other, but there are writers all over my family, and that really is a good feeling.
Hi, Lois. It's Teresa.
Teresa, hi. Say hello to Sam for me.
He's right over there. He said hi. I was just going to say, would you talk a little bit about what you do when you come in and do writing with the classes? You did writing with my 4th and 5th graders.
Yes.
And how you make those presentations.
Yes, I love doing those writing workshops. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. In fact, I do writing workshops for kids all the way up through high school, but I really enjoy working with the 5th graders most of all. And I think they do some testing in 5th grade, so they need some little boosting of their writing skills, perhaps something a little bit different from what their teachers are already doing for them. And so I do like a 1-hour workshop, very fast paced, with the kids doing I do some prompts for the kids to work on. We talk about what they've written. They get to share it if they wish to. It's over quickly, and they seem to enjoy it. Whether that translates into better scores on the testing, I can't speak to that, but I do think that there are kids who think they can't write, and then they're given an opportunity like this, and they do write, and they can write. There are kids also, you've noticed this, those of you media specialists know, there are kids who say, I don't like to read, you can't make me read. I don't like to write, you can't make me write. But with the right stimulus for writing, they might write anyway. With the right stimulus for reading, if they find the right book, they may become readers anyway. So what you do is so important for kids, and I feel privileged to be able to be part of that from time to time with some of your 5th graders.
I know when you did it with Heritage Trails, each of those kids walked away thinking they could write. And to me, that was the biggest accomplishment for them, was just knowing that they could.
Oh, how nice to hear that. Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to share, questions? Anything I can help you with?
Kyle, go ahead. I see
I was
Kyle.
just going to say, by a show of hands, I would love to know how many people had Lois Ruby in their school sometime in the last several years. So quite a number of people in here have seen you. And I just know that you have invested so much time into Oklahoma. And I just want to say how much that I appreciate that.
And her
And
husband,
that's why I
Tom.
wanted to set this new book in Oklahoma, because you've all been so kind to me. And I've had such wonderful times among all of you and in your schools. And didn't I see the woman from Poto there also? Kathy, is that her name?
No, I didn't see her in here.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'll just always remember the earthquake that we were in, Lois, together. Remember when we were at that house you invited Kenneth and I to dinner and our families?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden, the table started shaking and the chandelier was moving. It's pretty fun. And Lois's husband Tom travels with her, and so he's an integral part of the school visits as well. Is he? Someone asked if he's doing okay. He's doing fine. And is he there? Like, is he going to wave to us on screen, or is he?
What, do you want to see Tom?
If he's nearby, we'd love to have a wave from him.
Okay. Talk amongst yourselves. Let me grab him.
Okay. We have 2 more minutes. What's that from?
He
Talk
was
amongst
her
yourselves.
sidekick. He's always there by her side.
I know. I know.
I just thought he'd be right there.
Yeah, I
did
thought.
too. I thought he'd just be in the chair next to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too bad we only have 2 minutes. I bet he could go for 5.
There he is.
Dr. Tom, right.
Tom. Hi.
Hey,
Tom.
oh my goodness.
They were asking for you.
How could I refuse my public?
We've all
You
been
guys look great. All of you do.
There's Teresa.
Yeah, hi.
Sam's on here too, Tom.
There's Teresa.
There's
and
Teresa.
Sam.
Yeah, Sam, where are you, Sam? Wave.
He isn't there. But
Oh,
Yeah,
hi,
he is.
Sam.
Yeah, he's there.
It's
You
the
look
famous
great, all of you.
Teresa's.
There are
Yep.
a lot of you, yes.
and Stacy's there and several other media specialists.
All our friends.
Yeah.
You all made us who we are today.
Hey,
Boy,
Tom, you like chocolate?
how are you?
I'm good.
Great.
Well, there's been some nice comments in the chat, and unfortunately, we're about 1 minute away from having to transition. But anything else anybody like to say real quick, or Lois and Tom, is anything you want to say real quick before we go?
We'd love to come back to Oklahoma.
Our kids will be so excited when they find out that her next book is about Oklahoma City, because they feel
Absolutely.
so connected to y'all.
Oh, thank
Yep.
you. Yeah.
Don't forget to mention more.
Yes.
Oh, yes, more or less we will, of course.
And we try to convince authors to come in, because the amount of time you spent during that Sequoia season, I think, besides your amazing book, I think it propelled you to victory that year, because of so many kids you got to know, and they fell in love with you and in your book. So, Lois Ruby, thank you for being here today. Tom, thank you for joining us for a minute. We're so
for
thankful
inviting
for
me.
you. Make sure that you have all of her books in your library, and especially her newest one. Remind me the name of it. I left my mind. The
Red
newest-
Minute.
Red Menace.
Red Menace.
Red Menace. Okay, everybody go out and get that one. And thank you again. We'll talk to you soon.
Be
I
well.
love it.
Be
You
well.
Bye, Tom.
everyone.
You do
All right.
so well.
Be
Bye-bye.
well.
Thank you. Lois Ruby. And now we are joined by best-selling author, former Sequoia winner, and all kinds of other author medals and wins, Jennifer Nielsen. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome to Oklahoma. We're doing great. How are you?
Doing excellent. It's a great day.
Great. We are here with some of Oklahoma's finest librarians and other educators here today, and who are big fans of yours. Looking forward to talking to you about your newest releases, your upcoming releases, anything you'd like to promote today. We would like to hear from you, and we'll be sharing stories about how our students love you and your books.
That's awesome. You want me to start with something then, or?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Well, listen, I just want to thank all of you. I know this is such a crazy time and you miss your students, you miss the kids coming in, you miss the discussions about books. And I want to say how appreciative we as authors are for who you are and what you do and your love for the kids. My next release, I'll show it to you, will be The Captive Kingdom. That is The False Prince, book 4 of the series. So for any of your kids who have liked this, the series is continuing. I see a little fist bump by Kyle Brown. That's awesome. And then I'm doing another, in March, I've got a new historical, another World War II historical, this one in Nazi-occupied France that will deal with the spies and the secret agents of the war and some of that sort of aspect of World War II.
All right. And also just a reminder to everybody, Jennifer is the author of The False Prince that won the Sequoia Award. And so book 4 in that series is coming out. And Jennifer has always been just so kind and so easy to communicate with. I know that after you won, we added you to our next year's Sequoia video, and you were so kind to help us with the opening of that. And we just appreciate how much that you have taken care of Oklahoma and you know, made us feel special.
You are special. You guys are special. You love the kids. You are doing, everybody doing the most you can for these students. The least I can do is to give back 10% of everything you all put in.
Thank you. All right, questions and comments. I see a couple of nice comments in the chat already from Meredith and Julie and Carol. Oh, and Jennifer too. Anybody want to ask their question or make comments out loud?
Hi, Jennifer. I'm from Central Middle School in Edmond, and we love your books. Our students, you don't even have to promote them very much, but I book talk them all the time. And Julie, another Edmond librarian, we put Resistance on our Edmond Middle School Red Dirt list. In addition to the Sequoia list, we've been promoting that for the last couple of years. And so I just want you to know how much we appreciate what goes into your books and how much our students just really enjoy reading your stories, and we have great discussions with them. And Resistance, I learned so much. I mean, how much research do you do on each one?
I'll show you, Meredith, for that. Let me grab a file.
Okay.
Resistance is particularly important because it's Holocaust. And so I cannot get a detail wrong. If I put it in the book, right, that's the way kids are going to remember it. So this is my notes. This isn't even the books that I went through, but I'll show you the level of detail. Like this, for example, this was a Nazi aerial map of the Warsaw Ghetto. And the reason it was important to me on this particular map is because I needed to see the sewer lines. And so you can see there just kind of when it gets into the details. I needed to say if there is a sewer hole on this street and you got into it, it can get you out of the ghetto. So I was following down to that level of detail. If you remember in the book, in the Warsaw Ghetto, she looks around and she sees this building and she thinks, I think this might have been a furniture store once. Right. That exact building on that street at one point had been a furniture store. It's that much detail. Behind me, I'll just take you to it. This is my research wall. This is poster boards. It's all color coded. This is the timeline for everything that happened in Resistance. But see, history isn't names, dates, and places. It's people. So this is, these are the faces of the people who actually did what I wrote about. And I kept this up the whole time I was writing so that all the time I would know that I was writing about real people and that real people had actually done this. And so I appreciate your recognition of the research, but it had to be right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Meredith.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Thank you.
Come back to Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh, anytime, right? Oklahoma's awesome.
Hi, Jennifer. I'm Jennifer, and I love your historical fiction books. Those are my absolute favorite. And my 16-year-old is sitting here next to me, and she loves your False Prince books. So between both of us, we've got all your books covered. I'm curious, when did your interest in World War II era things start? Because it seems like that's where most of the focus of your historical fiction is. And that's personal, my favorite era too. But I'm wondering, where did that begin for you? Where was the draw for writing about that specific period in history?
There was a Scholastic multi-platform series called Infinity Ring, and the topic I was assigned was World War II, and I just fell in love with it. I just fell in love with the whole thing. But for me then, Night Divided was the first historical, which is actually about 20 years post World War II, but it definitely springs out of World War II. Certainly Resistances, but Words on Fire, I mean, that's Lithuanian 1890s. I do have a World War II one coming out next fall, Rescue, that I talked about, but I want to do a World War I next because it's just a lesser known war. And I want to talk about the tunnel diggers who were going under no man's land. I think that would be really cool. But the thing about World War II is it was so encompassing. And it pushed everybody to their extremes. And so people found out who they really were, heroes or villains or whoever they were. You found out that in the war. I think it's not so different from the pandemic now, right? We see who people really are because that comes out in times of crisis.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jennifer, and hi to your 16-year-old hiding next to you.
Hi, Jennifer. I'm Carol Burns. I'm a librarian / fourth grade teacher. I have a dear friend, I hope she's on here, but I don't know, who is a Jennifer Nielsen groupie, and she recommended that I read The Scourge, especially now. And I love The False Prince. I mean, I loved those, and I loved Words on Fire. This year I read those. But she said to listen to it. And so the library took it back right before the end. But I couldn't get over the similarities in the time that you wrote that, set that in, and now. And so I was wondering where the idea for that came from, The Scourge.
The Scourge is like the worst possible inspiration for a children's novel, but now it seems very, very prescient. It was the history of leprosy. What fascinated me is the realization, that's the most feared disease in history, right? You get it, you can be quarantined away from your family for life. Like, that's Molokai Island in Hawaii. That's what that place was. What fascinated me is by the 1930s, we knew what leprosy was and we could cure it. And even then it was legal to take somebody who was diagnosed with it and pull them away from their family. And that fascinated me to realize it was never about the disease. It was always about fear of the disease, which led me to the understanding that if we make people afraid, we can control them. And so The Scourge, even though it's definitely a pandemic sort of a book, really, it is about why we must not give in to fear, because with fear, we lose our freedoms. Thank you. Thanks for that question.
Is that kind of what's happening now? Fear and losing our freedoms and things, maybe?
Oh, we could get into that whole conversation, couldn't we?
Yeah, we try not to do politics or anything like that.
Wouldn't be wise.
Well, Jennifer, I'm Krista Cheney, and I teach junior high 7th grade. And I love to start Mondays with book talks and throw books at kids and try to get them to do little competitions to try to get the same book, maybe. And your False Prince, all I have to do is read the first page where he's got the roast beef under his arm, or just even say, hey, the one with the roast beef under his arm running, and they start scrambling, because it starts so fast. They're in it before they know it. And I just want to say thank you, because for my kids who love to read, they love a series, and so it's a great book to get in their hands. And then for struggling readers, it just takes off. If I can get them 20 minutes just to 2 minutes to read about that roast beef, they're in. So thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Krista. You know, that's the idea, right? Is I want to get kids reading and to pull them in. That is the book I get the most email about in terms of I didn't love to read until this book. And that's an amazing thing. But see, this is where it's so great. This is why I love librarians so much. There's nothing I do that is going to matter a bit without you book talking, putting it up there and making it available. So you and I, we're doing this together for students. And that's the magic of books, is that we do this together.
I did fist bump earlier because I listened to your series, the False Prince series, on audiobook. And I normally don't listen to YA. I hate to say that, but after you doing that video for us all those years ago, I said, I need to get into this series, and I just absolutely loved it. So I am so pumped for the new one. I'm actually already checking out the ones, because I want to listen to them again to have them fresh in my mind. So anyway, thanks for revisiting that, because I'm very excited about that.
Thank you, Kyle. What I had always said to kids who had written in is, if Sage ever returned to my imagination, I would listen. And then one day he was just there and he's like, I'm bored. And I'm like, all right, you want to get into some trouble? And he's like, I really do. And so I'm like, all right, I will throw it at you. I'm actually right now, like literally right before I checked in, all of this is actually False Prince 5. So I'm going on, because there's consequences for number 4. That will be False Prince 5, and I am really enjoying it. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Yes.
All right, we have a few more minutes with Jennifer Nielsen. Is anyone else have a comment or a question before we go? I know there's been some great comments in the chat. Just like you said, there was a high school group that did False Prince as a literature circles, and it turned some kids on to reading. And another thing about Jennifer, I remember when she was here to accept her award, Kyle and I presented her with about 15 or 20 books to sign, to give away at our conferences and things, and she just patiently just signed them all. Just so kind, after she had already signed about 100 for kids, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, it is always about kids, right? I mean, every single one of you here, look at all that you do and everything you do. We're, like I said, we're in this sort of thing together. I did notice a comment from Julie Neff just about the audiobook versions of the books. Charlie McWade is the narrator for the False Prince series. He is genius at it. And I love when there's a great audiobook narrator. So I appreciate that, Julie.
Have you secured him for the new book?
We're asking. I don't know what the status is, but we aren't considering anybody else. So I kind of hope it will be him. I will literally send him, I don't know, boxes of pizza or whatever it'll take, because I cannot imagine anyone else doing that.
Are you Lithuanian?
No.
No.
No, I've got probably more German blood than anything else. But the Lithuanian for Words on Fire, that one, it's just came out of a love of history of, I discovered this little tidbit talking about Lithuanian book smugglers. And here I am, I write books and I love history. And I thought, how do I not know anything about this? And I started asking other people, what do you know about the Lithuanian book smugglers? And it turns out most people are not really up on their Lithuanian history. And so immediately, I wrote my editor and I said, every other idea we've been considering for historical, let's put those aside. I only want to do this. It was fascinating to me that books became one of the pivotal instigators for Lithuania's freedom from the Russian Empire, that books accomplished what war and weaponry never could. And that's incredible that it actually happened in history.
There are so many levels that I could see using that for, and that was why I really appreciate it. It seemed like you knew the history so well. So again, kudos on the research. That was a beautiful book.
That was a tough one to research because it isn't well known. There's not much documentation of it, and because there was a media blackout for Lithuania, they weren't documenting it except in hindsight. And I found this one little book called 40 Years of Darkness. It is only available at like 8 universities. And I ordered it into, like, I live in this very small town, and all of a sudden they're getting this little book on Lithuanian history. And they're like, we knew it had to be for you. Cause like, who else is gonna order that in? So yeah, it was a tougher research, but I'm very, very proud of Words on Fire.
Okay, before Jennifer goes, Jennifer, do you have anything else that you would like to promote, or anything that's near and dear to your heart, anything you're doing that you'd like for us to check out or see?
Yeah, I'm going to show you guys just a couple of things here in my office. With this pandemic and all of the craziness that it's brought, I don't believe that anything is all good or all bad. Because I am home more, I have this awesome time to just explore all of these. These are works in progress for me, and everything is just a different idea that I normally would never have the opportunity to explore. So I'm very appreciative of at least that advantage. I do want to close. I've seen all of your comments and all of your kind words. Thank you. Your students are the reason I write, and all that you do and all that you care for, it means a great deal to me, because above all else, I'm a mom. I'm a mom, and I am somebody who is the beneficiary of a librarian who cared enough to put books into my hands. My kids are the beneficiaries of their librarians. And so that cycle continues. Thank you for all that you all do.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you for blessing all of our library and educator friends. And everybody, make sure you have all the books, Mark of the Thief series, Ascendant series, the Trader's Game series, and all of Jennifer's other historical fiction books in your library. Your kids are going to love them. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. You all have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
They're just all, Lois is still here, and they're just all so kind and humble. And, again, you hear it over and over that y'all are the catalyst. They write the books, but without you guys, they're not going to get in the right hands. And you guys have that special gift for making that big difference. And we really appreciate you too. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a best-selling author from New York City, originally from Canada, Gordon Korman. Hello, Gordon.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome to Oklahoma. And we know you've been here before. Kyle and I met you in Tulsa once.
Yes, exactly. Oklahoma. I've been to Tulsa, and I've been to Oklahoma City, and once, a very long time ago, I was in Lawton, Fort Sill area.
Yes.
Great state. Always happy to come back.
Great, and we'd love to have you back. Gordon is, like I said, best-selling author, but 5 times he's been on the Sequoia Award master list. Swindle, Born to Rock, Pop, Schooled, and Juvie 3. Great books. And I know I've got some signed one at the warehouse that we'll have at our next conference. That will be.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
We'd just love to hear from you, maybe hear about some of your newest releases, some of your projects that are coming up, and some people will have comments for you about how you've influenced their kiddos.
Well, sure. First of all, thank you for including me in your weekly Zoom or daily Zoom, right? You do this every day?
We've been doing daily, yes.
So for those of you who don't know me, I've been writing for more than 3/4 of my life. Like, my first book was actually my 7th grade English assignment. So I was 12 when that began. I turned 56 last year. So I've been doing this for 40 plus years. It's been a really, really great ride. I have been super, super blessed by state programs like the Sequoia Award in Oklahoma and in many states, because that really is an amazing delivery system to get your books into the hands of kids. So I feel like I've been really, really lucky to have been greatly embraced by schools. So my newest book is, see if you can see, it's called Notorious. It looks to me like it's written backwards, but I don't know if it's coming out the right way to you guys. If it looks backwards, this actually does not look like this on the real book, but it is almost like a kind of like a classic whodunit murder mystery about a dog. I'm a huge murder mystery fan, and I love the idea of the classic story Murder on the Orient Express. And not that it's on a train, but what if there was a murder and you don't even know who to look at for the perpetrator, just because every single person there has a motive for wanting this person out of the way. And it kind of reminded me of that dog in every neighborhood that howls at the moon till 4 a.m. and digs up everybody's yard, and your TV and your internet's always going down because he chews through the cable wires and he scratches your car. That real notorious, in fact, my title for the book was The Notorious DOG. My editors kind of shouted me down on that. But if a dog like that ever died under mysterious circumstances, how would you ever know who did it? Because every single person in that community, in that neighborhood, has a reason for wanting that dog out of the way. So these two kids, Keenan and ZB, determine, actually, this well-behaved Cocker Spaniel on the cover with the bone in his mouth, he is not our murder victim, but if you can see, there is a kind of a shadowy figure of a gigantic, evil monster dog in the background. So that is the original Barney. And Barney was a 200-pound, part Mastiff, part Rottweiler, and he was the notorious DOG. Barney dies under mysterious circumstances, and these two kids set out to find out who did it, if anybody did it. The other twist is Barney was 15 years old, which is really, really old for a dog. So it's entirely possible nothing happened to Barney. He just died of natural causes. But that was sort of my inspiration for it, was almost to write this kind of canine Murder on the Orient Express. I kind of lost you there.
Kenneth, you're muted.
Oh, did I freeze?
No, I think Kenneth just disappeared on us. So
okay, well,
yeah.
We're all learning about the value.
I don't know what happened to him, but I just want to say I just recently listened to Restart, and I just absolutely loved it. And I know there's a lot of people in here that are Restart fans, and I just would love to know how you come up with such amazing ideas. Are you just jogging and it just pops in? Do you have a voice that you hear in your head? What is it that comes to you?
I'm kind of a what if guy. Like I wrote my first book when I was so young, and so early in my career, it was just very, very natural for me to be inspired by personal experience. I would sort of write about myself and my friends, and then what happened was I got older, and those experiences didn't really fit anymore. So I had to replace the experiences that I didn't have with kind of what if thinking. And Restart was really just kind of a what if. Like, what if the worst kid in a school got this ginormous do-over at his entire life? Kind of a thought experiment where I was almost wondering, your personality, is it kind of nature or nurture, right? Is it hardwired into you, or is it kind of shaped by the people you meet, the stuff that happens to you? Well, I mean, if it's nature, if it's hardwired into you, Chase Ambrose can fall off his roof 15 times. It doesn't matter. He is always destined to go back to being that bully, that kind of tough kid. But if it's nurture, it is possible for him to be a different kind of person. And actually, I wrote a pretty good first draft when I was writing Restart. The one thing I think I kind of messed up was, so I made it too simple, I think, in the first draft. It was almost like the minute Chase recovered from his accident, he was instantly a different kind of person. So the book almost read like, oh, he used to be so mean. Now he's nice. Yay. And the more I thought about it, the world is never that simple. You know, you don't get to totally reinvent yourself. Boom. So I sort of felt like, you know, kids are always saying to me, yeah, but Chase can't remember the kid he used to be. Well, yeah, but his old life is still there. His co-bullies, his buddies on the football team, that power that he used to have as kind of the alpha jock and the alpha jerk of that school is just kind of there for him to reach out and grab it. He has to choose to be a different person. So when I was writing that second draft, what I really focused on was, you shouldn't know until the very last chapter if this kid is going to be able to put it off. It's right there in the title. Is it ever possible to totally restart?
Well, I just loved it. And so I think Kenneth's back and he usually moderates these things. So
oh, okay.
You left me, Kenneth, and I had to take over. And I don't know. I don't think I did very well.
I'm sure you
did great. You did great. Oh, there he is. Okay.
It just Zoom turned off twice. So anyway, again, we're joined by Gordon Korman. Sorry, I stepped out for a minute. Does anyone else have any questions or comments before we go a little further?
Mr. Korman, I'm Teresa from Moore. Hi. How did you, I had read somewhere that you do not have a dog. Is that still so?
Yes, we're actually a guinea pig family.
Okay.
We have two of the they're technically called show pigs, but they're like the super hairy kind of guinea pig. I think for me it started with the Swindle series, right? And just trying to get into the mind of Luthor, the big Doberman, and I guess I just got into this habit of just trying to really sort of put human attributes into my animal characters. And I had a lot of success with it. Kids really responded. And I think I never had a dog growing up because my dad was allergic, but my mom lived with a lot of dogs and just seemed to really, you know, she was the person I was sort of modeling myself after, because she always sort of was able to sort of put herself in the mindset of a dog as it tried to kind of navigate itself through the human world. And that's kind of where I go when I'm writing those animal characters.
And when I have reluctant readers and some of my 4th and 5th graders, I say, well, what kind of animals do you like? And inevitably, a lot of them mention dog. So I take them over to your shelf and I get them on Swindle. And I go, and if you like it, let me know, let me know what you like about it. And they always come back and get the next ones in line.
That's
and
right.
They always want to know which one came next. Mm-hmm. So you've got your own shelf at my library.
Excellent. Well, and it's always like a little bit extra cred, when the kids who reading is not their number one thing kind of gravitate towards your books. I mean, that makes me feel really, really good. So thank you for that.
Well, they do. Our reluctant readers at my middle school, they love your books. I even use them for discussion books all the time. Would you talk about Juvie 3 just a little bit? I mean, that one, I think I've used more than any with my reluctant boy readers. It's just phenomenal.
That's great. I did a series many years ago called On the Run, which was about a brother and sister who were wanted by the FBI. It was almost like The Fugitive for kids, and the series started out with them in kind of like a juvenile detention farm. And I did a lot of research when I was writing it about alternative juvenile detention programs. Like what happens to kids who are really, really in trouble with the law? And I found the topic really, really fascinating. And On the Run, though, as soon as they were gone from the farm, they were literally on the run, and I couldn't do it. But I kept saying to myself, one of these days I'm going to go back to these alternative programs and to really sort of explore what happens to teenagers who are convicted of major crimes. And that was the Juvie 3. I mean, other personal connections. I live in New York. I used to live right in New York City. And I think that it's an interesting place because it is a place that you can get along without a car. I mean, if you really did have these 3 teenagers, convicted youth offenders, with their own place in New York City, they really would be able to kind of get away with it better there, like disappear, than maybe any other place in the world. So it was a perfect setting for me. But mostly it was just a really interesting way to explore the concept of crime and punishment and guilt and also kind of redemption and forgiveness.
All right. Anyone else before we ask a few other questions? Anybody? Comments? There you go.
I do want to tag on to what she was saying. When I taught at Moore West, it's a Title I school. And Juvie 3, we personally as teachers went to every thrift store in Oklahoma City to be able to buy enough for every kid to have their own copy. And when I say they ate the book, I don't know how else to say that book by reluctant boy readers. We would have students that would come to our class that are 3 or 4 grade levels below average, and they would come up and say, "Can we finish that today?" I would say, "But we have 10 chapters left." They wanted.
That's great to hear. I mean, and it's really nice for me to hear, just because it isn't one of the books of mine that you hear about the most, to be honest with you. I hear a lot about Unteachables. I hear a lot about Restart. I hear about school. Juvie 3 has certainly always had its fans, and it's always sold, but it really hasn't been one of my, kind of one of the ones that's made the bestseller lists or anything like that. Which is interesting, because sometimes I think that the books that are effective with kids in schools and the ones that are really being read the most are not necessarily the books that get the most attention kind of in the larger kind of retail business world. So thank you for that.
Here tonight, we also have some students watching on. We have some students watching on YouTube today. Is there anything you'd like to say to any of those aspiring 7th graders like you were?
Oh, 7th graders. That year is particularly impactful to me, just because that's where I started writing. So I don't know if you guys know this. My first book was our 7th grade English teacher was the track and field coach, and it was really just sort of a staffing thing at the school, right? They were one short of English teachers, and the way our schedule worked, the only adult who was available to cover our class was this coach, right? So nice guy, but all his training was PE. It was his first year teaching. He had no idea what to tell us to do. And so when it came to creative writing, he just sort of blanked and said, "Work on whatever you want for the rest of the year." It was February, right? So February to June, we had a class period every single day, to write one story. And I got into it, started working on it in class, but then it kind of took off, and I began bringing it home, working on it at night. And I don't know, hang on one sec. So this is my 7th grade English project, a book called this can't be happening at McDonald Hall. And you can see it's not the thickest book in the world. But that really is what I wrote. Like this is kind of what started it all off for me, being a writer. So sometimes when you're just sitting there in class, like you never know what some random assignment is going to set you on the path toward. You know, for me, the track coach teaching English in my school district in Canada changed my life.
All right, we just have a couple more minutes left, but Gordon, as far as school visits, if people from Oklahoma were to try to set it up for you to come present, are you doing lots of school visits? Not right now, but in the
Not
future?
these days. Yeah, I mean everything canceled out, but I do a ton of school visits, and you know, I mean, just, you know, if you would contact me through my website, mostly. I mean, I was recently, when I was in Tulsa, was for the Charlotte Zarrow Award, right? But we visited some schools connected to that, and it was, you know, maybe it's just because my career has started in school and has always had that sort of school connection, but I love doing school visits. Now, I mean, especially now when I can't do them, like it really kind of comes clear how much I enjoy being with kids. And even some of the things that, you know, you sort of roll your eyes at a little bit, like I miss pizza party with the 5th grade. You know, I miss like, you know, kids wanting autographs and selfies and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's become almost an ache for me to get back out there and meet some kids.
All right, last chance before we wrap up Gordon's time with us. Anybody else?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Did we talk about war stories?
Oh, sure. No, war stories. I'm sure I have one of those somewhere. Hang on, wait. So, wait, that's not war stories. I have one. Hang on. So, War Stories is the new one. It comes out in July, and so it's sort of a kind of a multi-generational story of a 7th grader whose great-grandfather was a D-Day veteran. And his great-grandfather is invited to France to receive an award, and brings the great-grandson with him. And they basically follow exactly the path of the great-grandfather in the Second World War, meaning they first go to Fort Benning, Georgia, where he received his training. They go to London. They go to the south of England, where all the staging and training happened. They sail to Normandy, and they really follow his path to the town of Saint Regine, which is the town where he was involved in the battle and is going to be decorated. So the story is told in sort of 2 forms: the present with the kid and the great-grandfather, and of course the memories of the then 17-year-old soldier as he followed his path through the Second World War. It was, I mean, I always wanted to write a story of the Second World War, and I never knew exactly how to do it. I always sort of thought that it was historical fiction or nothing. And the way War Stories kind of played out with, you know, my kid in the present and the flashbacks to the great-grandfather's story, it is one of my all-time favorite books. I'm super, super excited for it to come out.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to read it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we have just thanked you for this honor, for being here today. I mean, Oklahoma, it seems like you're on the Sequoia list all the time, 5 times. The Zorro Award was huge too. So, Oklahoma favorite, Gordon Korman, thank you for blessing us with this time. And is there anything else you'd like to promote before you go? Anything that you want us to go make sure we
I
do?
feel like I've plugged enough at this point, but I'm thrilled that you guys like we got a little Juvie 3 action in there. It was great. Now, I am not the kind of writer necessarily who is going to win the Newbery all the time or get the kind of sort of retail attention. And the way that I have been able to reach my audience has been through teachers like you, right? You guys have been the delivery system, and programs like the Sequoia have been the delivery system that has gotten my books into the hands of so many young readers. So I just wanted to thank you for having me today, and thank you for what you do.
Right. Gordon Korman, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you. All right. That was awesome. Our next guest is here. You know her as the author of Lemons, and she has a couple of other great books. One is coming out soon, I believe. This is Melissa Savage, everybody. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good. Great to see you. We sure got to know Melissa. She's been to Oklahoma, came to OTA. Raise your hand if you have had Melissa at your school.
Kathy.
Yes.
Yay!
And yes, Janet. Good, awesome. Okay, and we just are really big fans of Melissa's. Melissa, we're just here to chat with you, maybe tell some things about what our students love about your books, and also hear about your new stuff. So if you want to start off, maybe just telling us how you're doing and what's going on.
Well, thank you for inviting me to talk with you all. It's so good to see you. I guess my newest book just came out in January called Nessie Quest. And just as I was getting ready to go up and promote it, can you hear me okay? Is that,
yes.
You can, okay. This happened and we're all stuck at home and everything got canceled. So I'm spending time doing a lot of Zooms with classes. Teachers, I'm just amazed at how resilient you all are. You just got with the program and started doing these Zooms. And so I get on these Zooms with all these classes and the teachers know exactly how to do it, and it works so great. And so I'm still able to see the kids, which has been really wonderful for me. Yes, and I have a new book coming out next January, or it's slated to come out next January, called Karma Moon Ghost Hunter. So.
Tell us about that one.
That is a story, a modern day story. It is set in the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. I often get the question from kids, do you come up with your character first or the story first? And in this particular case, I came up with the setting first. If you've ever been to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, is so beautiful, this historic hotel. It's also the site of, or the setting for The Shining, which Stephen King wrote. And I've been on every tour at this hotel. It's just this amazing, beautiful, historic hotel. And they talk about how Stephen King stayed there one night with his wife. They got stuck in a snowstorm and they were the only people in the hotel. And he wrote The Shining in the middle of the night about this couple in this hotel being the only couple. But there's a lot of stories about the people who have stayed in this hotel, and it's just such an amazing property. So I decided that was going to be my setting for my next book. And it's a story about Karma Moon and her dad, who is a documentary filmmaker. And he gets a call from Netflix, which is a big deal for his documentary company. And he is supposed to do a ghost hunting episodic television show, but to get that contract, they have to get a ghost on film. And so he and Karma Moon go to the hotel for spring break looking for this ghost. And Karma Moon is just struggling with anxiety. So she has to battle anxiety while she's living in this haunted hotel. So that's supposed to come out in January.
Oh, you'll have to write a sequel about the Skirvin Hotel in Oklahoma City.
Oh, I don't know
those stories.
Oh, I don't know about that one.
Oh yes, there've been a lot of NBA teams who won't stay there because of the ghosts that they've seen there. Yeah, a perfect sequel.
That would be a perfect sequel. Yeah, the Stanley has a lot of stories like that too, and they filmed movies there. And the one story they tell about the movie Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey, and apparently Jim Carrey. This is the story they tell. Jim Carrey came down from his room in the middle of the night in his underwear and said, "I'm out of here, get me a room at the Holiday Inn." And he would only go in for filming after that and never talked about it. So I don't know what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I loved Nessie Quest.
Oh, thank you.
Vincent and I did it as a read aloud together every night. Yes, we should have had the hot chocolate, but it was a great story and we did love practicing our Scottish accent. It was awesome.
That's very good.
It was great. It was just as wonderful as Lemons. Wasn't disappointed at all. So thanks for writing that great story.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Hammy Bean in Nessie Quest is a blind character. And I grew up with a mother who's blind. And one time I heard her telling someone, they had asked her how she navigates down the hallway. And my mom said, "I hear the walls." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" And she was talking about echolocation. And so I added, I thought if I did a Nessie Quest or a Loch Ness Monster mystery and then had a character who was blind in it and that had that component. So I asked my mom if she would help me make sure I got that character right. And so she helped me a lot with this book.
Oh, I think that made it even more special as we read that at the end, Melissa. It was just, it was a great story.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you seeing that.
Well, I've been helping someone pick out books for a brand new school. And when we talk about nonfiction, especially in the 000 section, or between there, before you get to 100, your books are covering a lot of those areas. And there's kids, every librarian always says, "I have to beef up my Sasquatch, my Loch Ness Monster, my scary, my UFOs, and all that stuff." So you're hitting on all those places. So I can see where the librarians would love to point them towards your books. Hey, if you love stuff about Sasquatch, go read Limits. If you love this, go get that. So when you run out of stuff in there, is there some other things that are that you're thinking about doing down the line that intrigue you?
Yeah, I would like to do well, my next book, I guess, that I'm working on right now is a book about a treasure hunt. So that's a little bit different. There's no creature in that one. And then I have one going just about bullying. There's so much going on in the world right now with that. And I just feel compelled to write about it. I don't know how that will look but I just feel like I need to write that story right now. And then I am trying my hand at a young adult. The story about Nexium came out, the cult Nexium, and the man was charged and found guilty of human trafficking. And I'm really fascinated with that subject matter. And I've been doing a lot of research on it. And I've been working on a YA, but that's just, just because I'm interested in it. So I find that the psychology of it really fascinating.
I bet there's the research probably takes you into some rabbit holes that you were surprised to find.
Yes, absolutely.
We're chatting with Melissa Savage, author of Lemons and several other great books. Nessie Quest is her newest. Any questions or comments about her books?
I just want to say that how much we enjoyed when you came into Oklahoma. And I know that you recently contacted us about coming back to Oklahoma to promote Nessie's Quest. And so are you still planning on doing school visits coming up this fall? Are you, is that something you're still interested in?
I love doing school visits. You know, everything has been canceled. So yeah, when things get back on track, I would love to do school visits. Right now I'm doing some summer writing camps, and the date keeps getting pushed back and pushed back. I hope they're going to happen. And I hope that I would be able to do some events come this fall, depending on what, you know, how things happen with the virus. But I also do Zooms and Skypes with classrooms or book clubs. But I do a lot of communication with kids. So absolutely.
Well, that's good news.
And the last time you were here, you were splitting time in different places, and you had a foundation you were working with. Are you still doing that?
Yep, I'm in Phoenix, and my husband works in Colorado. So right now I'm in Colorado with him. We're quarantined together, but we're both working from home, which is nice. And I have been working on starting a foundation. A lot of you know that Tobin, who is the main character of Lemons, one of the main characters, is named after my son. And he passed away in 2012. And so the book Lemons is about grief and loss. And a lot of that is something that came after we lost our son. And I met so many other families who've lost somebody really special who they shouldn't have had to lose. And I wanted to write a story about grief and loss, and how it's okay to talk about that. And it happens to all of us. And sometimes for kids, I think reading about something they're going through helps them feel not so alone in the world. And when I go on school visits and I have a student come up to me and say, I lost my, and your story really meant a lot to me because of that. And it made me feel like you understood what I was going through. That just means the world to me. And so I've been trying to start a foundation where authors will go in at bedside at the hospital and help kids who have medically frail illnesses write their story. And so I've been in talks with other foundations, and I think I take a couple steps forward, a couple steps back, but I feel like I'm really on the cusp of something now. Talking with another foundation with possibly partnering up with them. So we're moving forward.
All right. Other questions?
That's amazing. I hope it goes so well for you, Melissa. Is a great need from someone who's experienced several different kinds of losses at different levels. Being able to have their stories would be so great. So thank you for thinking of that.
Well, you know, that it was a really difficult period in our families, in our family, and we had the most amazing people, our doctors, our nurses, child life. I mean, I don't know what we would have done without them. They were so amazing. And I remember thinking, I want to do something to help these families the way people helped us. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nurse. What could I do? And this sort of fell into place. I got published, and I thought, well, maybe this would be something that that would be helpful to kids and families. So.
I know we have several people in here who are on the Sequoia committees, and of course you've met Kathy Hickson, you've been at her library. With Nessie Quest being eligible for a future Sequoia list, we want to make sure that they all have a chance to read that. Kathy, do y'all have enough copies of that to have everybody read that?
Not yet.
Oh, I guess you won't get that until you won't get that. Well, never mind. I'm off on my dates, but anyway, yeah.
It's published January of 2020, right?
Right. So you'll be reading them next year. Okay, great. Okay.
No, that's this
No,
year.
they're reading them now.
Oh, they're reading them now. Okay, great.
You need to read it, Kathy. It is so good.
Yes,
I
we'd
have
love
a copy
to see
full.
Melissa back on the list. Okay.
Who
Now
is
that
the
I
publisher on that, Melissa?
It's Crown Books for Young Readers. Same. I've been really fortunate to work with the same publishing house for all 4 books at this point. So.
and Crown is under the Random House umbrella, right? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to read your book about the Estes Park because my family, we just got to go there this past year, and it was, well, maybe it was 2 years ago, but it was when all the national parks were shut down. But so we couldn't go into Estes Park, but the hotel was still open, and so we got to do a tour, the ghost tour, and we heard a lot about the Jim Carrey. They had told us about that, and so anyway, I'm very excited because I'll be able to read that book and then take myself into the different locations through that. So I'm very excited about that.
So the question is, did you have a sighting while you were there? Do you see anything?
No, they had us walk around that big ballroom and everything, and we never saw a thing. So,
Yeah,
but it was still fun. It was
yeah.
fun.
I've been on every tour, never seen anything. I always tell the kids, you know, I write about all these cryptids and things. I've never seen a thing. I wish I had some amazing story to tell you, but I just don't.
Well, besides the foundation, what next adventure for a cryptozoologist would you be writing about? And FYI, I love that Tobin made a appearance in Nessie Quest. That was so clever.
You know, I try to slip him in every book somewhere. That's my, you know, Lemonade says, you know, her mom's name is very important and she doesn't want the universe to forget it. And I feel the same about Tobin. So I try and slip him in every single book. But it was really fun to be able to add him to the book. And I was afraid the publisher would say, I don't think so. But she said she liked it too. So she kept it in. So,
It was good.
Yeah.
Do you have a next adventure?
Well, I'm working on a treasure map one right now. So it's an adventure in a different way with no creatures. So I'm fascinated by this. I can't remember his name. His name is Forrest. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? He's a very wealthy man who had buried a treasure somewhere in the West, like Colorado area up in the mountains. And lots of people have searched for it. Some people have died looking for it. And it's a box full of jewels and all kinds of things. And Forrest, I can't remember his last name. I think his first name is Forrest. And then he wrote a book with all the clues in it. And I just think that's such a fun story. And I thought about doing a story of my own similar to that. So that's how I got the idea for it.
Are you going to bury treasure that we need to all go find?
Maybe.
Okay. I'm up for it.
Well, hello, my name is Krista Cheney, and I have students watching on the live YouTube, and I have my niece. And she has texted me because we live far away from each other. She said that she loves lemons.
Oh.
And she wants to know what authors, she's in late elementary, and she's wondering what authors you looked up to, because she loves getting on here with me to see all the authors she looks up to, and she looks up to you. So what authors did you look up to when you were little, is what she said.
Okay. Well, my favorite author was Judy Blume. She was my absolute favorite. I read everything of hers. I wanted to be Judy Blume. And so she was my absolute favorite. And I put some of my other favorites in the book Lemons. So I did put one of Judy Blume's books in there, otherwise known as Sheila the Great. Another favorite of mine was Cricket in Times Square. And there's a Newbery winner called Philip Hall Likes Me, I Reckon Maybe. And I loved that growing up. I loved that story. And so I put that in Lemons as well. But Judy Blume was definitely one of my favorites. I love KT Camillo. I think everything she writes is just genius. I just think she's such a good writer. And Gary Schmidt is another one of my favorites.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite.
Really? What's your favorite book by Gary Schmidt?
I really push oh no, now my mind's gone blank. I'm fangirling. Oh pickles.
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Yes, I know that I'm not good with names. but the Wednesday Wars, I like, but the sequel to that is
okay for now.
probably one of my favorite books.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. That is really good. I love Wednesday Wars too, and I love that he took the character from Wednesday Wars and made it gave him his own book. So he was one of my teachers. I got a master's degree in writing from Hamlin, and he was a teacher at the time, and he's amazing. He's amazing. So yeah, I have a lot of favorites.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time with Melissa. We are so excited that you came to join us. Thank you for blessing our Oklahoma Library friends and teachers. And we wish you the best. And everybody needs to make sure that they purchase Melissa's books. And best wishes to you, Melissa. Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you all, and stay safe and well. And thank you for all you do for our kids.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Okay. Our next guest, we saved her for last because, you know, she is Wendelin Van Draanen. She's written 1 million books. The last place that she was before the big quarantine was here in Edmond, Oklahoma, visiting schools. Kyle and I both got to see her. And she is a former Sequoia Award winner, all kinds of awards, best-selling books. Welcome, Wendelin Van Draanen.
Thank you so much. It's fun to be back in Oklahoma this way, I guess.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful way, I guess, to end travel for me for this year, because we had such a great time at all the schools in the Edmond area, and it always feels like coming home to me to come back and see y'all. I just love visiting.
Well, there's several people here who have hosted you. We would love to hear stories about that from them and you. We'd also love for you to promote anything that you have upcoming or your newest release.
I don't like to promote. I like to talk about books. Okay. Just in a sense of a lot of people have heard about Flipped. A lot of people know about the Sammy Keys and the Shredder Man series, and so they're already familiar. My latest book is called Hope in the Mail, which is a accumulation of it's my first nonfiction, and it's all my the things I learned the hard way about writing, because I went to college not to become an author. My parents were immigrants, and they thought math and science was the way for a girl to go. And so I took the science track and graduated with degrees in ergonomics and computer science and math, because I'm an overachiever. And then it turns out, after I was a teacher for 15 years, I taught math and computer science. But I discovered that writing was my passion. And so it became the thing that I did in any free moment I had. And it has turned into this wonderful career now, although I always think of myself as being a teacher. And for you teachers, I really feel for what you're going through in this whole adjustment to the pandemic thing. It's incredible to me, the things that you're asked, the hoops you're asked to jump through to keep education going, and the way that you have to just kind of feet to the fire, learn new skills, and stay connected with your students. It's just unbelievable to me what the expectations that's put on a teacher in an everyday situation, just being a teacher. It's so much energy, so much work, so much to keep up with. And now this. And so really, I mean, I got on this little sidetrack, but I used to be a teacher. And so I really feel for what y'all are going through, because it's tough. It's tough.
Well, how has this time affected your long distance running?
Well, so we live in a fairly, I don't know if you call it rural, but it's not densely populated. And so I still get up early, because if I don't go for a run, I'm insane. I'm an insane person. And so I get up and I bring my little mask with me, because California has very strict protocol for what you're supposed to do if you come into visual view of somebody else. And so I bring my little mask. And so when I pass somebody or somebody passes me, you wear your little mask. But pretty much I get up early so I don't see a lot of people, and I go for my run, and then I come back, and then I can kind of settle into my day. But it's a very strange thing. We live near the beach, and the beach is usually it's a place people come on the weekends from the valley where it's really hot, and having them it's just empty. The beaches are just empty. They're not closed here like they are in Los Angeles County and places there, but it's just empty. People are just hunkered down, staying home, which for a writer is kind of the way I live my life anyway. The difficult thing for us has been that there have been people in our family that needed medical attention, and just that whole dynamic of that, not from COVID, but so that's been really difficult to handle. But just from day-to-day life, I just do what I do, which is pretty much I go and I hide in my mind with my characters. I don't have to wear a face mask around my characters. So I just play with them all day.
Well, some of your friends from Edmond are here, Meredith and some others. Would y'all like to say anything or speak with Wendelin?
Well, I want others to be able to say hi to Wendelin, but hi, Wendelin.
Hi, Meredith.
You have our heart at Central. We will just never forget your visits, just watching. If you've never had Wendelin, put her on your list. Dynamic, energetic, entertainer, and her books speak for themselves. If you haven't had a chance to read Hope in the Mail, Wendelin also narrates it on the audiobook. And you narrated the last Sammy Keys also, didn't you, Wendelin?
Right. So there are 18 Sammy Keys total. It starts the first day of 7th grade. The series does. It's a mystery series. Starts the first day of 7th grade, ends the last week of 8th grade. And she grows up a month at a time from book to book. So it's kind of a girl power series. And it is, Sammy is not a perfect kid, because who in middle school really is? She gets into trouble, but she learns things from the mistakes she makes. The very last book was a situation where Sammy could not come to the phone. She was unavailable. So there was a narrator in the story, and that narrator was me. So I wound up doing my narrator part of the audiobook, because it didn't make sense to have Tara Sands, who's done all the voices for all the books up till then. It didn't make sense for her to do that. So I'm the narrator for the narrator part, and then she does all the voices that have accumulated across 18 years and 18 books. And that's so she does everything from Officer Borsch to Sammy's little young friends that are in elementary school. She does all the voices. So that was my first exposure to narrating an audiobook. And then for Hope in the Mail, since it's part memoir, part writing guide, and it's supposed to be entirely inspiring for people who have a creative dream, especially for aspiring writers, to help keep them incentivized. So that, because it's very hard to have a creative pursuit when you hear no a lot. And in writing and in trying to get published, there are so many no's that are thrown at you, and it is really easy to get discouraged. And I think we all need, creative people need to support each other and to help each other through the rough waters of getting to where it is that you dream of going. And so for Hope in the Mail, I never thought I was going to write any memoir, but the stories behind the stories all kind of weave back into things that have happened to me in my life and how that impacted the story. Like I tell a little story in Hope in the Mail about Sammy Keys. She discovers, well, Sammy lives in a bad situation. She has to sneak up the fire escape to come into the building at night because it's complicated, but that's what she has to do. So she's pretty disgruntled about her living situation. But in the third book in the series, she discovers that there's this girl who's living homeless down by the riverbed in a large cardboard box that's been camouflaged by tumbleweed and stuff. And when she discovers this girl, she wants to do something to help her. So I am personally at this time in my life, we had been through some really, really bad times. And my husband and I and our two little kids were renting a 400 square foot house that was falling apart, but that's where we were. That was our situation in life at that time. And there were a lot of homeless people living in our neighborhood. And it was the weekend and my husband wasn't home. My two little kids were, and this homeless woman comes and knocks on my door and she wants to know if she can use my dryer. And my protective mama bear instinct is to tell her no. But then I'm writing this story about Sammy Keys wanting to help this homeless woman. And in my head, I'm like, how can you tell her no? Sammy would want to help her. And so it's this really weird thing with characters and how you're, as the author, you're writing the story, but it turns out that your characters can turn around and teach you things about how to be a better person. So, because it makes you analyze kind of your steps and the things that you're doing in life. And so why am I talking about this? I don't know. I kind of went down that way because that's what my mind does. You would not want to be in my brain. It's a frightening ride. So, Meredith, why was I talking about?
Well, I think you were telling it because it's interesting.
Yes.
Well, in Runaway, Wendelin, you made her not Runaway. Yes, the homeless girl that appeared in Sammy Keys and the Sisters of Mercy is what you were talking about. She was homeless.
Thank you for getting me back on track, because the book that I've won the Sequoia Book Award for was Runaway. And after I wrote the third Sammy Keys book, and after this girl, her name is Holly, the homeless girl, she winds up being part of Sammy World. So from the third book to the end of the series, Holly is part of Sammy World. But there was this question, which is, how did Holly wind up in the situation she was in? What would it be like to be homeless at 12 and 13? And just exploring that and being a teacher and seeing that not everybody lives in a gated community. You know, there are a lot of people who have it really rough. I wanted to be able to write Holly's story in a way that it was unique to Holly and was you were able to shelve it for upper elementary school and middle school kids, because that's really my wheelhouse is upper. Those are the kids I don't know why I identify with them very strongly. The kind of 4th through 8th graders. And so I wound up writing this whole book about this girl, Holly, who was inspired by this woman who knocked on my door in real life. So it's like life becomes art, which then becomes, so the whole idea for Hope in the Mail is that you don't know what's going to inspire you in your life. And that if you just keep working towards something and you keep pursuing that thing that you love to do or that you hope to be, that if you don't give up on it, if you never quit trying, you will eventually succeed. It took me 10 years of rejection from New York to finally get my first book deal. So I feel like the stories in Hope in the Mail are there to entertain, but they're also to give the reader the feeling that they can do the thing they want to do. That was a really long answer to, I don't remember the question, but please ask me another question. So
I'm just going to say that I've seen a lot of authors do presentations, and yours is always at the top. If I was to rank them, I mean, at the very, very top. But I've seen a lot of them were very similar. You do something that's completely different every single time I've seen you, which is amazing in of itself, because I've seen you so many times. One of the coolest things was when I went to Caritas for an author presentation, and Wendelin gets out a guitar and starts playing with this junior high, middle school band. And she's just jamming with them on stage. And that was just a very, very cool thing that I was just blown away by your talent, because it's so
Caritas makes me do the weirdest things. Okay. She had me ride in on a motorcycle once. So it's just, you know, I just try to go with the flow, but sometimes the flow over in Caritas NPR is a little wild.
Yeah. I just try to keep thinking things that I would never do, never know how to do, and have
ask me to do them.
Yeah.
I may have video of you playing guitar somewhere. I may have to try
don't
find that.
Don't.
We practiced one time and it was interesting. Yeah.
It was great. It was great.
So does anybody have questions about, I mean, I have 35 books now. So I would like to answer questions that you might have about anything, because I don't know where to start, because I don't want to repeat something that you already know all about. So ask me something.
I have a question.
Hey.
The first book I found when I first got my job in the library was Running Dream. And it was signed by you, but I wasn't the librarian. But I was fascinated by your how you could get into her brain. So I'm wondering what running has to do with you and how that story came about.
So it's like people, when they read The Running Dream, they assume that, well, she's a fanatic runner, which I am not. I run because if I don't run, then I'm not fun to be around, because I'm very hyper and I get kind of uptight. But if I go for a run, I can be a little more mellow. So I ran track when I was in high school, and then I went to college, and I put on my freshman 15, and then I started running, you know, to try to counterbalance the caloric intake with the calories out when you're sitting being a student. And then gradually I went slower and slower. So I had to go longer and longer. And it wasn't until I was having a big birthday. It was a big birthday. And I had this idea for The Running Dream, that because I was writing this book and I was inspired by the amputees that I had interviewed and the people that I'd gotten to know, and just their sense of being grateful to be alive. And I mean, we wake up it's like we wake up and there's this, oh, I've got to do this. Oh, I've got to do that. Oh, I got aches and pains. But it's interesting. It was interesting to me to see all these people who had gone through horrific things in their life, cancer, war, motorcycle accident, all sorts of things where they lost a limb. And they all had in common, they were grateful to be alive. And it was sort of like an adjustment. It's just like, adjust your attitude. Do you wake up every morning and you feel grateful for what you have? And so, so I've been a runner my whole life, but it's not for competition. It's more for just mental wellness. And so when I was researching The Running Dream, and I decided that there were a lot of things. I was going to bring awareness to the fact that library budgets were being cut. And I wanted to run the New York City Marathon under the Exercise the Right to Read, this program that we started, Exercise the Right to Read, so that it would bring awareness to how library budgets were being cut. And so my first marathon, I just ran it to raise money for libraries. And then it was actually on the flight home from running the marathon to raise money for libraries that I had seen these people during that race people who were amputees and had structural differences, people who had challenges that I couldn't imagine them running 26.2 miles. But there they were at the start line, and there they were at the finish line. And it was so inspiring just to see that against all indicators, they were going to run that marathon, doggone it. So it was on the flight home that I got the idea about a girl who was fully abled, had everything going for her, had a lot of friends in school, was on the track team and was on path to become an Olympic athlete. And then on the way home from a track meet, her bus is in a horrible accident and her foot winds up getting crushed and they have to amputate her leg. And she thinks her life is over. So I got this idea, and I didn't want to write that story because to me that felt like tragedy, and it felt so sorrowful, and I didn't know anything about anything that I needed to know about to write the story. But it's a funny thing about characters that invade, because this one kind of came in and wouldn't let me go. But it wasn't until I had the idea of her being placed. So the character Jessica, who loses her leg, she gets placed when she comes back to school. She hasn't got her prosthetic limb yet. She comes back to school, and the teachers place her at the back of the classroom at the special needs table, where this girl with cerebral palsy has been sitting all year. Jessica has never even said hello to her. And now all of a sudden she's sitting there beside her. And I, as a teacher and someone who had always made a big effort to try to get the popular students to be more inclusive of the students on the outskirts, the idea that suddenly this girl who was popular was now, people didn't know how to say hello to her either. And now she was sitting at the special needs table, and people were thinking of her as special needs. What would that do to her? And how would it make her see that back when she had all her limbs, she was missing parts of a different kind? So, so about running, the running dream really doesn't have anything to do, it has something to do with running, but it doesn't have, it's not about running. It's about finding, it's about seeing the person, not the disability. It's about finding the heart, your heart in somebody else. It's about so many things that have nothing to do with running.
Wow. We're just about out of time. I have a question, but it's pretty shallow. You said you narrated one of your books on the audio thing, and so I'm thinking, okay, well, she got paid to do the book. I assume probably got paid to do the audio too. Is that? I'm curious. Do you see a check from that and go, okay, or is it like, wow, I can't believe they get paid that much, or wow, I can't believe they get paid that little?
Oh, it is a paltry sum. Okay. It is not. It is not a profession to go in if that's the thing that's going to sustain you in life. I mean, I couldn't pay my health insurance with it even for a month. So no, there wasn't. I would like to break some news here because you are the Brown brothers and Meredith is in the house. I just found out today, I haven't signed it yet or anything, but I'm just going to tell you because I'm going to have my first picture book.
Wow.
Which after 35 books, I finally figured out how to write a picture book. I've tried before, but those little words, I mean, I wound up writing, hundreds of pages, and you can't do that for a picture book. But it's about a little girl wants to be an astronaut, and its title is Gravity is Bringing Me Down. And it's all about a kind of a growing spurt she's going through. She's very clumsy. She has a very clumsy day, but she blames it all on gravity, and she wishes she was on the space station, and she wishes this and she wishes that. But anyway, so that's actually very exciting news for me because, and again, it's not one of those things like I don't illustrate. So the words are, they're not many of them, but it's been 15 years of me trying to get this done. So you guys.
Do you have an illustrator yet? Do you
No, no. I just, the offers officially come into my agent, and I just said, I don't care, whatever it is, fine, because it's, you know, it's a little better than doing the audiobook, but I don't have a track record as a picture book author. I don't have a Caldecott. I don't have anything. So I don't care. I just thought it's fun. It's a fun thing. So it's a happy, fun thing in this time of kind of unknown. And how are you guys doing with your teaching and your I know time's up, but give me a couple of minutes. Tell me how y'all are doing. I want to know.
Well, first, just to follow up on your thing, this might be our first ever chance to have a Redbud winner and a Sequoia winner. So maybe that book can be on the Redbud in a couple.
You just stop with the awards, okay?
we want you to come back to Oklahoma in support of that. And then my follow-up question is, how will that change your presentations? Because you'll be talking to pre-K and kindergartners instead of.
So I have Shredder Man and I have The Gecko and Sticky, which are books for like 3rd, 4th, 5th. But I don't have anything for younger. And so now an elementary school that wants to have me come won't have to worry about finding 2 authors to cover the youngest kids and the other one. They can just use and abuse me.
All right. Well, we have gone over, but one last chance. There's a lot of great comments in the chat. But also if anyone has one last thing to say before we all go for the weekend.
I'd like to.
Yes.
I was hoping Wendelin would explain the poster in her background.
Oh, it's my Flipped movie poster. They made a movie out of my book Flipped, and it was a wonderful, amazing experience. The director was Rob Reiner, who did The Princess Bride, and The Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies of all time. So, but the actual experience was really good because the man read the book, he liked the book, and he stuck to the book.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
It's an unusual thing.
So you stayed with your publisher your entire career, one publisher, isn't that correct?
That is, yep. I got 35 books with It's Knopf at Random House.
Are they also doing your picture book?
They are.
Okay. That's pretty amazing.
It kind of is.
It is. Because we meet a lot of authors and they've got books from this publisher, big books from this publisher. And you've been able to stay with the same publisher, and you've got books that are now going to be pre-K all the way up through high school, and so that's totally amazing. So.
Well, and the reason is, well, one of the contributing factors to that is that unlike a lot of editors, mine has stayed at the same publishing house. And partly she told me that was because we had this Sammy Keys series that we did together. And she didn't want to leave in the middle of it either. So it's kind of like we stuck together through that 18 books, 18 years. And in between those, we did other projects. So 35 books together across over 20 years.
All right. Well, we wish you nothing but good things, and we are so thankful you were here today. Please stay safe and healthy, and please come back to Oklahoma as soon as you can. Everybody just make sure that you try to get Wendelin to your district as soon as possible.
The Brown brothers are amazing. They do so much good. They're so big-hearted people. I just love you guys. Thank you so much for inviting me. Teachers, thanks for spending the time with us authors. Really appreciate that you have. And I wish you really, really, strength through this ordeal.
Thank you, Wendelin. The great Wendelin Van Draanen, everybody. Thank you.